everyone. My name is Evie Lupine. Welcome back to my channel, and today I have another video for you all. Today, we are going to be talking about the top mistakes I see new dominants making. I recently made a video that's very similar to this one for new submissives, and I was not going to leave the dominants out of this conversation because I know there is a real lack of good resources for newer dominants, and I want you all to be able to have better first experiences and know what to do when these common issues do pop up. And I am not a dom myself, but I have been with many of them. I am friends with many of them. So I like to think I know somewhat about what a lot of new doms go through. And with that being said, let's go ahead and get into it.
Popping in real quick to make sure that you all know about the Kink bundle. It is back once again this year, and it's better than ever. This time, we have over 36 online products related to BDSM education. And the topics this year are all across the board. We have something for everyone. We have classes on puppy play, on humiliation, on service submission, on subspace, and we also have my new online comprehensive ultimate BDSM 101 course. It has some of the best material I've ever made in it. I'm extremely proud of it. If you do want to get this bundle, the deal is only available for another 3 days. Right now, you can get all of these 36 online products for a 96% discount. A link to it will be down below. I really hope you check it out. Everyone loves it. This is a fantastic deal. Once again, it is only available for another 3 days. The link will be below and in a pinned comment. Thank you.
The first one I want to talk about here is a lot of doms come in with the belief that they already have to know everything, whatever that means, before they can find a partner. And that leads to, secondarily, a lot of people misrepresenting their experience in order to find partners because they think no one will want to play with them until they've been in the scene for at least a year, probably more like 5 years. And I want to validate this a little bit because there are a lot of communities where people are reluctant to play with newer dominant people because maybe they've been hurt in the past, or they've been lied to, or because they're more experienced, they have higher expectations of what to get out of a scene, and they might not want to be in like an awkward teaching position as a submissive or a bottom where they're both trying to submit, but then also kind of like lead and direct at the same time. And not very many people are comfortable with that kind of energy in their scenes, and not very many dominants are very happy with receiving that too. Like, they're awkward about being in that position as well. So it just makes it complicated across the board. And I think there's a few things to factor in here too. Like, one, that is realistic. Like, a lot of people are more reluctant to play with new people, but there's a huge difference between like, I made a FetLife account yesterday and I know nothing, like, submit to me. And people that have, in the time leading up to getting into the scene, have been reading, have been studying, have been practicing. And if you can demonstrate that you have been practicing and learning independently, that's going to take you so far. Like, I just said there's not very many resources for newer dominants, but in terms of hard skills, there is quite a bit online. So there's all kinds of websites and tutorials and books and podcasts and groups on FetLife and Discord chats, and there's lots of opportunities both to socialize and learn about kink, and also to practice on your own, on yourself, on a practice dummy. And if you go in saying, I'm new to this, I haven't played with another person before, but I have this flogger and I've been practicing it in my room for the last month, or I've been reading about this a lot, or something along those lines, you can demonstrate a commitment to learning. That is really going to help you find a partner who is willing to meet you maybe more in the middle and not just like from complete scratch, right? And I will also say too, if you are someone that is misrepresenting your years of experience, like, just don't do that. It's only ever going to come back to bite you. And somebody who is more experienced is going to be able to tell immediately that you are not actually as experienced as you are saying you are, and it's only going to make it harder for you. So please don't do that. It's never a good idea, and it only contributes to the problem of other dominant people having trouble finding partners. And the good thing is, once you do get some experience, it loops back around from being like not in demand at all to like very in demand once you get some good skills under your belt. But moving on, related to this problem is number 2, which is a lot of new doms try to go the lone wolf route. And frankly, a lot of doms regardless of experience level, try to do this, where they think in order to be a really good dom, they need to forge everything by themselves and go it alone and never talk to anyone and just wing it, basically. Like, it's a very individualist mentality about kink, and because of that, they don't value community. Like, they think the community is just for essentially meeting partners, and it is really good for that, but it's also about making community with other doms and getting feedback and advice and emotional support, and that can do so much for your kink journey. Find people that tend to stay more in the lone wolf path tend to miss out on missing a lot of things. They maybe don't have skills that are as polished as they could be, and they also have issues with, in particular, once they get into power exchange, leaning entirely on their submissive partner. And subs will also do this too, but I find with doms, they tend to be even more isolated, so they are relying on their submissive partner, who probably has their own stuff going on, for all of their emotional needs, all of their reassurance, all of their support, that ultimately can corrode your kink relationship, and that's not going to be sustainable long term. So stay away from that. It's okay. Be part of a pack. Don't be a lone wolf. That's kind of my advice on that one. Now, moving on from there, this is a really big one, is when you're first developing your sense of dominance, a lot of people will confuse being domineering with being dominant. I have a very old video about this one, like, I don't know, probably 5+ years old at this point. And a lot of people, when they're trying to, especially if a partner got them into it and they're trying to develop their own dominant role and figure out what that looks like, they will substitute actual earned confidence with just essentially being a bully and bossing people around and barking orders. And some people like that. Some people like the gruff, uncultured approach, and they like being ordered about and screamed at and yelled at. And, like, I'm not going to yuck their yum. But for most people in the scene, most submissives, they are not going to take well to someone that is just like, do this, blah, 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 like, and just you sort of acting like the world's worst drill sergeant. Like, at least a drill sergeant has some structure behind them, and, like, there's a reason for it, and, like, there's flavor there. Just, like, being bossy and essentially saying, like, we'll do it because I told you so, and then acting like they don't care about their other partner. They don't care about the other end of the line. And I think that is what really gets people that lean into domineering in trouble, is because they're so domineering. They're just focused on, like, me, and what I want. They don't think about what their partner wants. They don't think about the emotional component of kink. And there's not any tenderness, there's not any obvious regard. And when you get into that mentality of just like, well, it's all about me, whatever I want to do as I say, without having earned getting to that place, like, you're really going to set yourself up for not having a good reputation in the scene, and frankly, you've probably earned it, because if you have shown that you don't care about what your partner thinks and feels, and you're going to boss them around regardless of what they have to say about it, you're just, no, just, no. And this is even worse when people do this in a public setting. It's bad enough to do it alone at home in the bedroom with one other person. If you were doing this at a lunch, if you were doing this at a party, heaven help you. Do not start going up to random subs you don't even know and start yelling at them and telling them to kneel and to call you whatever title. Like, just please do not do that. For your own sake, for my sake, everyone's sake in the scene, just don't go there, okay? It's never good. No one likes that. It's just going to make you look like a colossal jagoff, okay? So just don't do that. Very different from that, changing gears a little bit, one other belief I see new dominants have is they think that they cannot, or they're not allowed to, use a safe word or ask for aftercare. And I see this very commonly with people that are new to the scene and maybe learned about it from social media like Tumblr. And on social media websites, oftentimes the simplified version of these things is that aftercare is for helping the submissive feel better after a scene. Or a safe word is so a submissive can end the scene if something goes wrong. And it's not really talked about like it's a two-way street, but you can actually use a safe word. If you are in a position where a submissive partner is like, maybe they're bratting at you and you did not negotiate for that, you don't like it, you can say yellow, you can say red, you can stop the scene right there, and they can complain and they can cry and they can beg and they can do whatever they want, but you are allowed to set that boundary. dominants are allowed to have boundaries, and they're also allowed to have aftercare, because I think the mentality that aftercare is only for subs makes it sound like dominants have none of their own crap they go through mentally during a scene. Like, yeah, it maybe isn't necessarily physically intense to do a caning scene, but there can be a lot wrapped up in that mentally. And if you are someone who has a lot of that stuff wrapped up, you might really benefit from having aftercare where you get cuddled, you get kissed on the forehead, they bring you water, you do stuff together, like maybe you do a coloring book or you cuddle on the couch. You can do shared stuff together that is aftercare for each of you, because obviously you don't necessarily always want to put your sub in a position where they're essentially doing like service submission when they should also be getting aftercare. You can negotiate that and figure out what that looks like over time. But yeah, you can also have aftercare, and you should ask for that if you want it. Now, you can't necessarily spring it on your partner after the scene is done, because you can't get stuff that you don't negotiate for. But if you do want to bring it up during a negotiation, I highly recommend it. It's something that you should be emboldened to ask for if you do actually want it and you think you would benefit from it. But next thing on here is, I mentioned hard skills, and I've talked oftentimes in videos about how there is an emphasis on hard skills in the scene, and I find a lot of doms really focus on learning the hard skills, and they don't really focus on the soft skills. Like, hard skills would be how to throw a flogger, how to tie rope, how to do caning, whatever. And soft skills would be like how to communicate to your submissive partner when something is upsetting them, or how to set a boundary in a kind way. Like, those are the soft skills. And if you're looking at building a sustainable relationship, those soft skills are going to pay out way, way more than the hard skills are. The hard skills are kind of the foot in the door. The hard skills are what you put at the top of the CV to say, you know how to do this stuff. But the soft skills are where the relationship magic really is. Like, how you handle difficult conversations, how you talk to someone when they're upset, how you handle it when somebody says a safe word. Like, do you know how to help a person feel safe? Do you know how to validate somebody's feelings? These are not necessarily things we are taught how to do, especially if you are somebody that was raised as a man. You are probably not necessarily going to have a lot of these skills because you were probably invalidated a lot. You were probably not necessarily told that you needed to be a safe person to be around. You're supposed to be, tough and gruff and, have a hard exterior. And you can actually learn how to be softer. And I will have some book recommendations linked down below for this I think are good at teaching some soft skills. I know that there's a couple of books. There's one by Stella Harris, who is in the BDSM community. There's a couple of other ones that are more just general, like psychology books or self-help books that I find are good for this. But invest more in knowing how to help your partner feel safe and loved and cherished. Know how to communicate to them what you're feeling and how to support them when they need you. Because that is something that when you get to that point in the relationship, when somebody really needs to lean on you or you lean on them, that is where the real relationship, in my honest opinion, is made. All right, next up, we have something that is somewhat related to soft skills, and that is a lot of new doms have a tendency to use dominance as a way to cover up insecurities or guilt or jealousy, and they oftentimes also have shame they have not addressed around their kink interest, and that will come out in their relationships. And I think to a certain extent, a lot of people in the BDSM world and also in power exchange will tend to use kink to compensate for something, because that's kind of what we do in relationships. We use our partnerships to make us stronger where we are weaker, but there is a limit to that. And I have found in my own relationships and in my experience that dominants who are using their dominance as a way to cover up for insecurity or fears, that will eventually come out. And it will oftentimes be very negative, especially if the dominant partner is not really willing to address that or talk about it. And it can be very destructive to the relationship. So I'm not saying you need to have all your guilt and shame resolved before you get into a power exchange relationship, but it's worth working on. I actually have some recommendations I'll also put down below for DBT skills actually that you can use to help with navigating guilt and shame. I actually have another video where I have talked about this extensively for dominance, where it's about walking through that process and like knowing where it comes from and identifying it, and then hopefully being able to start working through it. If you have like childhood trauma, if you have very high level, intense experiences of guilt and shame, or you're someone that has maybe like a past negative BDSM relationship that's weighing on you, you're trying to get back into the scene now, kind of starting over, I think at least starting on the process of working on it will smooth your way and ultimately help you have better experiences, because if you're not addressing it, it's not going to be solved just by having a submissive. It's like submissives will sometimes also use kink relationships as a way to get out of adulthood, essentially. And the same can also be true for dominance, but less in a physical way, I find, and more of an emotional way. And if you were trying to treat your partner as an emotional surrogate or as like a mommy, and you're not doing some kind of like mommy dom switch thing, probably not great. Don't recommend that. And there are so many tools out there for learning how to cope with that and get through it. And this is also another reason why community support is so important, and why having things like groups for dominance and making those social connections, not just with potential partners, but with other dominants, like that can do so much for you. And don't be afraid to look out for that, because it can make all the difference. I find a lot of the things I'm talking about today have to do more with the emotional and mental side of kink and less of the physical side, and this is certainly no exception. The next one I want to talk about is forgetting to show your human side to your partner. Like I talked about, making sure that you're addressing underlying things like guilt and shame. I talked about not using your partner as an emotional surrogate. And there is sort of an all or nothing mentality that some people can have, where either they're like totally porous and they're just like letting out all their feelings and kind of like, not in a mean way necessarily, but burdening their partner with like supporting all of that without necessarily getting consent to do so. And then you have the opposite side, which is like complete wall, just stone. I feel nothing. I am only a robot dom who is there to perform the act of dominance, and nothing ever affects me. And I am this stoic guardian of intellect, and like nothing ever phases me. And that's a fun little fantasy. A lot of people are into that for the fantasy aspect, but as I've already said many times, that is not really sustainable for a long-term power exchange relationship. One-time scene? Why not? Short-term relationship? You can probably do it. But by not showing your human side, by which I mean like not showing your genuine emotions, not showing that things also affect you, you are really impeding the ability to grow connection and bonding in your relationship. I actually have a video also from a couple years ago now that is called Dom Disillusionment Syndrome that covers this. But on both sides of the slash, people will have this belief that doms are supposed to be this like unmovable boulder in the ocean. And that is not true. And I think you're actually getting in the way of the level of connection you could be having by just pretending nothing ever gets to you. Like, it's hard to know how to get there if you don't really have any practice, because I am somebody who cries all the freaking time. So I don't really have problems with this personally. But I think just starting in small ways, like telling your partner things that you appreciate about them, telling them things that you enjoy, letting them into a little bit more of your inner garden of, your past, your history, your likes, your dislikes, your beliefs, beyond just like, how much you find space fascinating or like what your philosophy of life is. Like that intellectual stuff is great, but it's the emotional connection and shared emotional experiences that really, really help a relationship grow together and feel that connection on both sides. Because your submissive is oftentimes giving a lot to you and is being very transparent. And if you're not giving that back, the fantasy can only really take you so far. So let your partner a little bit more into your inner walled garden. Let them see the real you, your real opinions. Don't necessarily go whole hog all at once, because it feels really scary and vulnerable, but the more vulnerability you can offer to your partner, the more you will get back, and the more you can grow together and have that really beautiful shared experience. And that's such an honor, I think, both ways. It is an honor when a dominant can give that to their partner. It's also an honor when a submissive gives that back to you. So yeah, I think just not being as walled off is like super important, and I don't think people talk about it enough. But in any case, moving on, and this is completely different from anything I've mentioned, is not investing enough time in defining what your dominant look is. This is my own personal thing. This is like my own little bugbear I have about this. Maybe this is just where I live, because I am in the Pacific Northwest, and that's where I've done like 90% of my kink. A lot of doms kind of just lean on the black t-shirt cargo shorts thing, and like you end up kind of samey in a space filled with other like nerds and tech people. You don't really stick out. And female dominants, I think, are better about this on average. They tend to have like pretty cute outfits. But male doms especially end up like kind of just throwing on whatever works. And then they're surprised when they get into a scene space and they're like, I don't know, it's kind of hard to feel dominant. Your outfit, whatever colors you're wearing, the kinds of things that you're wearing, if you're wearing makeup or not, how your hair is done, all of that can affect your mood, right? Like, if you're going into a scene where you are supposed to be this like savage primal dominant and you're wearing like khakis and a polo, is that going to work? Probably not. Like, think about the kinds of scenes you want to be having and what kind of energy you want to have as a dominant, and figure out how to make that happen. That could be the classic suit look. That could be something with utility kilt, because people love those around here. That could be something with fishnet. It could be something with heels. Like, feel free to get creative and experiment and see what actually helps you get into your dominant headspace, what helps you feel powerful, in control, like you are dressing in a way that feels very authentic to you. Again, also have a much older video on how to do this, but this is something I find a lot of people really overlook, especially if you are struggling to separate like everyday life from kink life, or you're struggling to figure out and find your like inner dominant self. Experimenting with your personal aesthetic in kink can help so much with that. And don't overlook it, because yes, it's not as exciting as like learning how to throw a whip, but like, you know, it's also nice to have the look to it. It doesn't have to be expensive. You can thrift stuff, you can get secondhand. There's all kinds of options for that. They do not require spending a lot of money. But try it. Just try something. I promise it'll probably make more of a difference than you were expecting it to. Another thing that I see a lot of doms struggle with is they can be embarrassed to ask for service. And I think this happens for a couple of reasons. I think the main reason why it happens is we are not oftentimes taught that we are worthy of other people doing things for us out of the kindness of their own hearts without being paid back in some way. So when someone is freely offering to us to like take off our shoes or pour us a drink or press our bed sheets, we're like, you want to actually like do that for me? And that leads people to be very awkward and be like, no, actually, I'm kind of uncomfortable. I don't want to do it. And I'm not saying you should do stuff that makes you uncomfortable. If you don't want to go there, don't go there. But I think learning how to be open to receiving service is so critical. I find that when people are getting into scenarios where maybe a partner really wants to do like high protocol or do a dinner or something, it's usually the dominants that are like, but like, I don't know how to feel like comfortable with this. Like, it feels weird for somebody to clear my plate for me, and I have the urge to leap up and like grab the plate and like take it downstairs, because if I don't, I'm like an ungracious guest and I'm like taking advantage. And I think reminding yourself that your partner is doing this because they care about you, because they want you to be happy, and service is something that should be building up your relationship because you do actually deserve it, is something you need to keep in mind. Like, if you can just tell yourself, and hopefully over time start to believe it, that you are worthy of receiving service, that you are good enough for service, and that it's not to take advantage of you, it is not to make you owe one, it is not to get a leg up somewhere where you're gonna have a favor that you're gonna have to owe this person. It's just about really and truly wanting to give you something to relax, to make your day better, to just demonstrate maybe the love and caring that somebody has for you. And leaning into that and putting faith into that will hopefully over time, in addition to just sort of like normalizing it in your brain and telling yourself like, this is normal, I want this, I'm worthy of this, it's okay that I want this, I'm not a bad person for wanting someone to take off my shoes, that will hopefully over time help ease things and make it simpler to be able to accept service. And also, if you are embarrassed to ask for things, but you know you want them, like you would really like it if your partner could like pack your lunches for you, you can also practice asking for it in less direct ways. I oftentimes will tell submissives to do this, but it also works for doms too. If you have trouble asking for something verbally in the moment, that's okay. Write an email, write it on a post-it note, put it on a whiteboard, text them. You know, you can find other ways to communicate things that are less intense than like direct eye contact, submissive, now you will perform this task for me. Like, it allows it to be a little easier, a little bit more informal, and have more of a dialogue around it. Like, maybe if you live together, you have a whiteboard on your fridge, and then you agree that like once a day you can write something that you would like them to do for you. And then you can put on there, I would love it if you would pack my lunch for me, or I would love it if you would do my laundry. And then it's just one thing. Doesn't have to be super intense. They get to do everything in their own time, in their own way. You're really letting off, the control aspect on that one temporarily, but you are allowing them to give you service, and then eventually you can work up into being more direct and more specific and get to that place of service that hopefully both of you want to be able to get to. Now, finally, and this is a very big one, trying too hard to make a perfect scene. And I'm not sure where people have gotten this impression. I don't know if it's like movies or what, or some other kind of media, but a lot of people think that in order to do a BDSM scene as a dom, you got to have all this like costuming, you got to have all this space and fancy equipment, and you got to have so much prep and talking about it ahead of time. Like, you do need to talk about it, but there's a limit to how fancy it really realistically needs to be. So lower your expectations. It can be really fun to do like a whole pirate capture scene thing with like costumes and like themed music and whatever. Like, that's fun. But maybe like once or twice a year is okay if you want to go there. And maybe people don't really have a sense of what a scene actually looks like. So maybe I'll just give you an example. So like a really average scene is you're going to have a little negotiation. You're going to say what you both want. You're going to talk about the details of it. Then you're going to do it. And then usually that means the submissive is on some kind of piece of furniture for like 10 minutes to maybe an hour. And during that time, you're going to be probably standing behind them and using an implement on them. And there's not going to be any costuming. There's not going to be any crazy role play. There's not going to be like 50 different implements. It's probably going to be like canes, floggers, paddles, some category of thing. Maybe some kind of bondage if you're feeling really extra that day and you want to layer it on. But it's going to be really, really simple. And then afterwards, your partner's going to melt into a puddle and they're going to be like, thank you so much for finally spanking me the way I wanted you to. And then you're going to be like, all I did was spank them. And they're just like a puddle on the ground. And you're going to be shocked. And you're going to be like, I thought I had to do more. This is okay. Like, sometimes kink is very like low effort, high reward once you get that skill built up for doing whatever kind of scene you're going to be doing. And it's okay if it's not crazy, if it's not something super involved, like maybe you read about on FetLife or reading books or something. You can start really small and really simple and have really short, simple scenes. Build your confidence from there, build it up piece by piece, different aspects of different kinks maybe you want to try, and then you get into more complicated scenes. So if you are stopping yourself from doing kink because you're overwhelmed by the kinds of scenes you think you need to come up with, it really does not need to be that complicated. It can literally be one activity for like an hour or less, and people are going to be more than happy with that most of the time. Trust me. And with that being said, those are all of the ideas I wanted to share for top mistakes I see dominants making. Thank you all so much for watching. I really appreciate it. I would love to know your thoughts about this one in a comment down below, especially if you are a dom. Are there other common mistakes that I did not list here that you see a lot of other people making? And what are your solutions to them? If you are a new dominant, I hope this helped you. Please give me any feedback you have in a comment down below. If you did enjoy this, already, please do subscribe because I make videos twice a week about all different kink and BDSM related topics. And finally, if you want to support what I do, the best you can do that is with Patreon. Link to that will be down below. If you do already support me there, thank you so, so much. It means the absolute world to me. And until I see you all next time, I hope you have a great rest of your day and a great rest of your week. Bye-bye.